For these socks, I'm going to be using Patton's Croy socks. Okay, so I am using the 60 cylinder Dean & Bean sock machine. So I'm going to start by hanging the bonnet on every other needle. Okay, so then I'm just going to wait to hang these needles once they come up over here. I'm going to start with waste yarn. I'm going to do 10 rows of waste yarn and make sure it's a contrasting color to your sock yarn. I'm going to put a soft weight in and start my row counter. Okay, so now all these needles are up, so I can finish hanging the rest of these. Now do 10 rows of waste yarn. I'm gonna stop with my main mark needle here at the yarn feeder. So here's my main mark right here, and I want it to stop right here. Okay, so now I'm gonna put in a ravel cord. So you can use like fishing line for this, something that's just gonna pull out of your yarn easily. So you can cut your waste yarn and put your ravel cord in. So my ravel cord is going in front of, this is the first needle. So my ravel cord's going on this side of it, and then my waste yarn is on this side. Okay, and we're gonna stop right at the main mark again. You're going to take out the ravel cord and put it into the center. Going to get your main yarn, and I'm doing a hung hem on this. So we are going to be using the heel spring eventually, so I'm putting it under the little heel spring attachment thing. And you can put a little weight clip on here if you want. I'm going to put in another weight. Oh, reset your yarn counter. And I'm going to do 20 rows. So my main mark is right here. I just hit 20 rows, so I want my main mark to be right here. Probably like around 4 o'clock. Okay, so this is where you're gonna start. I'm gonna take out my soft weight. So you take out your weight, then I like to get my little pick. So you're gonna go up and find your first stitch. So this is why you want contrasting waste yarn. So here's your yarn going in. This is the working yarn, and this is my waste yarn right here. So it's going to be in between the ravel cord and the waste yarn. So this is my first stitch right there. So I'm going to hang that right here. This is my first stitch right after my main mark. So my main marker is right here. That's my first stitch. So you're just going to go all the way along, and you're just grabbing the next stitch over. Whoops. And hanging it on every needle. And now when you turn your yarn, because you have no weight, you just want to hold down the stitches. Okay, so just keep on going around like that. So when you turn, because there's no weight in here, so you want to hold your stitches down. I just push down on the stitches. Once you've got all of your stitches on, then you can put your weights back in. Okay, so crank 2 rows. So now I'm going to be placing my ribber on. So I'm going to put in my ribber. So there's my ribber stopper. You want to line up the ribber stopper, which is like right here, with your ribber. I'm going to move my So I've marked my ribber to line up with the main mark. So this is where my first ribber needle is gonna go. Okay. So to put in the ribber needle, we're putting one in every other stitch. Pull the canister needle out. And lift it up and over with the ribber needle. And take the canister needle out. And then being careful not to let that stitch go over the latch. Place it into the ribber. Like that. So I pull the canister needle out a bit. Get the ribber needle in there. Pull the stitch over the canister needle and pull the canister needle out. And then put the ribber needle in, being careful not to let it go over, like underneath that latch. So just kind of grab it. So another thing to watch is when the ribbing needles are going underneath here. So we might need to move that up a bit. In the first round, make sure that you catch any dropped stitch from the ribbers. Okay, so then continue going every other needle. Making sure the stitch does not go underneath that latch, and just keep on going. Also, you need to be watching the ribber to make sure that your stitches are working. Okay. So hopefully you can see this from another view. So I pull the needle out, get the ribber needle in, and pull it up and off the canister needle. Pull the canister needle out, and then put the needle in. So making sure you hold that stitch back. You don't want the stitch going underneath that latch. So now reset your stitch counter. As you're cranking on this round, just watch your rib needles, make sure they've all knit, and if they haven't, fix them. 1, 2, 3, 4 of my ribber ones did not work. I have to fix those. Can you hear my dog snoring? You're snoring. You're snoring. Aww. So I'm taking my latch hook and a little pick. So you can see it didn't knit. That was over top. So I just took this off. And then I want to take the stitch off of the needle. Put your latch hook through the top, and then grab the string that didn't knit, and put it in so the latch goes. So this is the stitch right behind, and then the string is in here, so it's going to pull it through. And put that onto the hook. Okay, and so this one and this one did it also. So I'm just taking this string that didn't knit off. Oops. And then take the stitch off. So I just lift the needle up. It off, put your latch hook in from the top, go all the way over because you want your stitch to be behind the latch, and then grab your string and put it into the latch so it pulls it through the stitch. And then put that back on your needle. You can disengage your heel spring once you have all your needles in. Okay, then I'm gonna do 50 rows, and then I'm gonna take out some ribbing needles for the pre-heel. Okay, so now I'm on row 50. So I want the halfway mark to be at 4 o'clock. So you want to stop with the halfway mark at 4 o'clock. Okay, so here's the halfway mark. So we're going to start removing the rib needles for half of the sock. The first rib needle after the halfway mark, you're going to start removing all of them until the main mark and replacing them with a cylinder needle. Make sure you don't drop your ribbing needle in here. And make sure all your latches are down. You've gotten back to the main mark and you've taken out all those ribber stitches in between the halfway mark and the main mark. I like to do 20 pre-heel stitches. So now I'm gonna reset my stitch counter and I'm gonna go for 20 stitches before the heel. I've completed 20 rows, so now I'm gonna stop with the main mark at 4 o'clock. Right here. We're going to start taking all of these needles out of work and we're going to park the ribber needles. So to park the ribber needle, I'm just going to pull it out and you can just leave it like that, or I like to stick it down underneath the spring and it just stays like that, and then lift out of work all the cylinder needles because we're going to be starting the heel. So do that all the way around until you get to the halfway mark. And then watch, as you're knitting, watch this last stitch on either side because they have a tendency to not knit. Okay, so once you have all the needles out of work, you can take off the ribber. Now I'm going to put my heel forks in. I'm going to adjust my weight, my soft weight, to come up a bit more too. These are my marks for my heel, raising all the needles until I get to this mark. My marks are orange. Yours might be different. So just raise this needle. You have to engage your heel spring. Okay, and then just watch these. I always push down because I don't want to drop any stitches. Specifically watch like these end stitches because they have a tendency to drop. Okay, so then raise this one up. So once you've lifted all the needles up to the target marks, then we can start increasing. So you want to, the first increases, you're going to push down the first 2 needles closest to the main mark. Don't push them down all the way though, because you do not want the little latch to open up, or I mean close. And then you're going to wrap the yarn around those 2. Okay. So the yarn is behind these 2 that you just lowered. Okay, so then lower these 2 just enough, like don't push them all the way down. And then take the yarn and put it behind these 2. Okay, so now that you've done the 2 first increases, now you're just going to push 1 down until you get back to the main and the half mark. 1 down on each side, wrapping the yarn behind. This is my last needle that I need to lower on this side, and then I'll have 1 more on the other side. So we can lower that one, like it's right before the main mark. We need to wrap the yarn around these 2. So the one that you lowered and then the next one over. Okay, so make sure this one stays wrapped around the main shank. I just like use this tool and pull the yarn down so it's around, like underneath the little bump. So it's underneath this little bump area here, because you want that to stay around the ribbing needle as you go. I don't know if you can see that. So it's underneath, it's around the main shank. Okay, so then this one will be easier because you're gonna put you're gonna put this one down, but you're gonna wrap the yarn around both of these needles. Stop with the main mark at 4 o'clock. Okay, so there's the main mark. I'm stopping with it at 4 o'clock. We're gonna leave the heel forks in. Okay, so now from here, we're gonna push down all the needles and we're gonna put the ribber back on. So when you're pushing down the needles, make sure you don't push them down too far because you don't want the latch to come up. Close. Then you can start putting your parked ribbing needles back into the ribber. Okay, so watch, because when you put them up, the latch is gonna close and then they could fall off. So you just wanna pick them up over the latch. So do that all the way around. Oh, and you don't want to go too far over, otherwise you won't be able to put the ribber needle back in. Okay, so now once you go around, just watch very carefully and make sure everything's knitting properly. And if it's not, make sure you fix the stitch in this round. Oh, and disengage your heel spring now and turn on your row counter and reset it. And now you'll start doing the amount of rows that you calculated at the beginning. So I'm gonna be making a 9.5 inch sock. So I'm gonna be doing 65 rows. I have 65 rows now. So I'm going to stop with my main mark at 4 o'clock. So now we want to transfer all the ribbing needles to canister needles. Okay, once all the ribbing needles are replaced with cylinder needles, you can remove the ribber. I'm going to adjust my weight. Crank until your main mark is at 4 o'clock. Okay, so there is my main mark right here. Starting at the main mark and working around to the halfway mark, we're going to be lifting up the needles and making them out of work. So this is for the toe. Okay, so then crank until the raised needles are in front of the yarn holder, and watching for this stitch. You want to make sure it knit. Okay, so now engage your heel spring. Okay, so we're basically gonna do it the same way as the heel. There's one minor difference, but I'll get to that when we come back to doing the increases. So for the decreases, we're just gonna lift one on each side until we get to the target marks. So once you've raised all the needles up to the target marks, now we can start increasing. So the first two, we're going to push down. We're just going to push these two down just like the heel. We're going to put the yarn behind them. Okay, and then you're going to push these first two down and put the yarn behind them. Going to adjust my heel fork. Okay, so now you're just going to be pushing one down on each side until you get back to the main and the halfway mark. Okay, so now this is the last one before the main mark, so you're gonna put that one down and go just as normal, but then on the last one before the halfway mark, you're going to put it down and wrap it as normal, but then you're gonna stop with the main mark at 4 o'clock. So let's put this one down. And wrap it. So if I do this one as normal. Okay, so now this is the last one to put down. So we're gonna put it down, wrap it just like normal. And now when we start cranking, we're gonna stop with the main mark at 4 o'clock. Okay, so the main mark is at 4 o'clock. And then we're gonna push down all the needles. Don't push them down all the way. You don't want the latch to come up. Okay, so then crank until the main mark is at the yarn feeder. Okay, so now you want to cut your yarn, but make sure you have about a yard for the Kitchener stitch. And take it out of the yarn feeder. And then get your waste yarn. Okay, so put your waste yarn in. You want it starting on the first needle past the main mark. I'm going to crank 2 rows. Okay, so then you want to get stitch markers. Okay, so here's the halfway mark and here's the main mark. So we want to stick our stitch markers in so we know where the last stitches are. So put one on a stitch before the main mark, and then the other on this stitch after the main mark. So on either side of the main mark. So you want to put a stitch marker on either side of the main mark, the first stitch, and then the same with over here on the halfway mark. This is going to help us for Kitchenering, so we don't so we know that we went all the way to the end. So put a stitch marker on the stitch that's on either side of the halfway mark too. Okay, so you have a stitch marker on each side of the main mark and a stitch marker on each stitch of the halfway mark. And now I'm going to continue doing 10 rows of waste yarn. So if you can take out the heel weights or heel forks, but sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I just hold them all together because we're going to cut the waste yarn and take it off the machine. Okay, so then to take it off the machine, so I'm just going to hold my fork weights and the whole sock underneath. Just crank. pull the ravel cord. Okay, so now you want to get a yarn needle, and I just tuck all my waste yarn in, and I just kind of fold it so that these are visible. So this is where you're going to be starting. This is your first stitch. This is the first stitch on the bottom. So I like to pull a bar from the side, so then you kind of close this gap. So when you're choosing the bar, you want it to be the stitch. You don't want it to be the bar that's in between the stitches. So like, you don't want it to be this one in between the two stitches. You want it to be this one. It's the purl bump. Hope you can see that. So I'm gonna go down through this first. And then you're gonna go up through the stitch. Yeah, so we've gone down through that little bump, and then you're gonna go up through this bottom stitch with the marker in it. Also, you're gonna go up through that little sidebar that we just went through. Okay, and you wanna pull it snug, but not too tight. And then you're gonna go down through this top one and back down through the bottom stitch that we just came up. Just like that. You can remove these stitch markers. Okay. I just kind of fold the waste yarn in so that you can see all these little purl bumps to make it easier for yourself. Okay. So then pull it a little snug, and then we're going to, okay, so make sure you can see this. So this is your first stitch right here where the yarn's coming out. So then you want to follow this waste yarn over to this next stitch. So this is where you're going to go up, and then you're going to go back through the first stitch on the top. Okay, so now again, this is where you came up. So then you're going to follow the waste yarn over, and you're going to go down through this next stitch and through the stitch that we just came up. So now you're gonna follow this waste yarn over to the next stitch, go up through the next stitch and back through the top one that you just came down. So you're just gonna keep on doing that. Whenever you go over to the new stitch, you go back through the stitch that you just came through, whether it's on the top or bottom. And pull it snug, but not too tight. Like you want it to match the tightness of the rest of your sock, because this is meant to be invisible when we're done. Okay, so now again, follow the waste yarn over, go through the next, down through the next stitch, and then down through the stitch that you just came up. Okay, and then follow the waste yarn over to the next stitch and then back through the stitch you came down. Okay, so once you're down to the last 2 stitches, we're gonna also pick up one of these side ones. Okay, so I'm gonna go up through the last bottom one, and then, so I'm just gonna pull it through first, just make it easier. You can take this stitch marker out. Okay, so we went up through the last one, and we're gonna go up through one of these. I'm gonna grab this. So one of the ones beside, you're gonna go back up through the one that you came down, just like normal, and then go back down through this one, the last one with the stitch marker, and you can take your stitch marker out, and then also go down through the side stitch that you picked up, and then, so I'm just gonna go through those 2 first, and then you're gonna go back down through the one that you came up, the last bottom stitch. Okay, so then before you weave in the ends, make sure that you've got every one. And I like to turn it right side out. So turn it right side out and check the outside before you do anything. give it a check and make sure. Looks like you've got all the stitches. Okay, so then you can pull out the waste yarn. Okay, and then you can check out your work. So there it is. That's where you closed it. So right there. So that's the top of the toe. So that's where you Kitchenered. Looks pretty good, pretty invisible. So once it's good and you've checked it all, then you can turn it back around and weave in this end at the top and then weave in this one, and then you will be finished. And this is what you'll be left with, a nice ribbed sock. It's ribbed on top and on the like ankle and leg. That is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you liked it. Happy knitting!